You are listening to the Strong as a Working Mom podcast, episode number 88. There are loads of tools to help you change up your lifestyle. Let's talk about them and make sure you're using them properly. Welcome to the Strong as a Working Mom podcast. If you're balancing career, family, wellness, and some days sanity, you are in the right place. This is where high-achieving, busy working moms get the tools they need to eat, move, and think. I'm your host, physician, personal trainer, and certified life coach, Carrie Holland. Let's do this. Hey, how are you? What's new? What's good? So, what's good here? We are going to talk about a couple of different tools at your disposal that are meant to help you lose weight, get in shape, and change up your lifestyle. All right, so think about it. We live in a time where there are endless gadgets and apps and devices that can literally change the way you live your life. The technology that exists right now is mind-blowing, and it is only going to get bigger, better, fancier, and frankly, maybe even a little scarier from here. So my husband and I joke that it is only a matter of time before the iBrain exists. He came up with the idea of the iBrain, an implantable device where you think the thought and it's magically transported to the person you want to share it with. So you just think it. No talking, no texting, and no calling necessary. So I don't know if that's in existence yet, but when it comes to fruition, remember that you heard it here first, the iBrain. Okay? Just kidding. But in all seriousness, there are so many tools at your fingertips to help you achieve health and wellness, and I think it's worthwhile to talk about some of them. Many of you may already be using these devices, and I want to talk about how you can use these tools to optimize your life. But at the risk of being a Debbie Downer here, not only am I going to talk about how you can use these devices and instruments as tools, I'm also going to share how these tools can be used as weapons. So I'm taking just a little twist on this today. I want to point out some of the tools that both I and my clients use commonly and explain how you can use them to help you. But then I'm going to take it a step further and point out how you might be using these tools against yourself. And we're really going to dive into some of the ways that you're using these tools as weapons. And this comes from coaching loads of clients and seeing some repeated patterns. So sometimes you use these tools against yourself, and that is defeating the purpose of the tool entirely. And I've come across this enough times and with enough clients that I've picked up some recurring patterns. So I want to put a spotlight on some of these. So as you listen today, see if you can relate to any of these patterns. See if you're using any of these tools against yourself. And then I'm going to give you some ideas for how to see these tools for what they really are, so you can stop using them as weapons against yourself. Okay? I'm excited to talk about this because this has impacted so many of the women I work with. So I hope that this helps you see your gadgets and apps and tools just a little differently by the time we're done today. Okay, so let's go. So first, let's get started with your watch. Or really, I'm going to get even more specific and speak specifically to your wearable fitness tracker. So if you wear an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or a Garmin or any sort of watch that keeps track of your physical activity, you are wearing a tool. And that's great. That watch will give you all kinds of data. So most wearable fitness trackers nowadays will give you all kinds of metrics, like your heart rate and step count for starters. And what I would tell you is that those are the two most reliable pieces of data, other than the time, that you're going to get from your watch. So if you want to get an idea of your resting heart rate, your watch may be able to give you that data. Or if you want to know about how many steps you're getting in during the day, your tracker will tell you that. And depending on what kind of watch you're wearing, you will get all kinds of other information. You can track how many exercise minutes you've logged, or how many times you've stood up over the course of the day, what your pace per mile is on your run. And those pieces of data are all helpful. So it's no secret, we have become a sedentary population, and we could all stand to get up and move more, walk more, and exercise more. And your fitness tracker can help you monitor all of those metrics. So I know for me, now that I work from home and I'm seated in front of my computer for much of the day doing coaching sessions, now I spend a lot more time seated. And while I love my job, that is most definitely one of the downsides, being more sedentary. But my watch helps remind me to get up every hour and move, even if it's just for a few minutes. So when my watch vibrates and tells me, hey, it's time to stand up and walk around, I appreciate that because it's a break from being seated too long, either doing coaching calls or writing podcasts or whatever. And the point here is that your fitness tracker or wearable device can most definitely be a tool in that it offers you reminders to stay active. So one of the nice things about the Apple Watch is that it allows you to set your own targets. So you can decide, this is how many hours I will stand. This is how many minutes I want to exercise every day. This is my move goal for the day, which I will get to in just a second. So you are the driver here, and you get to decide what your fitness goals are that you enter into your tracker. And then once you set those goals, your tracking device will help hold yourself accountable. It will give you data as to how much exercise you've gotten in a day. It will tell you how many steps you've gotten, how many hours you've gotten up and walked around, how far along you are towards your movement goal. And all of those pieces of data are useful. Okay. So I think of your watch or your wearable fitness tracker as an accountability partner, but also a tool to create awareness. So you can use it to pick up patterns and see where you tend to sit more during the day. Or you can get an idea of how many steps you're getting in on an average day. You can get an idea of how much movement you're doing overall. And if you use this information to help you, then you're using the tool as it's intended. Okay, so for example, if you see that your average daily step count is 3,000 to 4,000 per day, you may decide you need to step it up and increase how much walking you do. And if that results in you getting a walking pad for your desk, or taking a short break after lunch for a midday walk, or doing more walking meetings instead of sitting in an office, then mission accomplished. Or if you see that on Sundays you hardly move at all, again, that's data. And you can decide, well, that's my rest day and I intend to keep it that way, no problem. Or you could see it and say, gee, I really don't move much at all those days. I'm going to do something about it, like a yoga class or a walk or a stretch session with an app, whatever it is. The other thing your wearable fitness tracker can do is show you your progress. You can log your miles run or walked. You can log your running pace, biking pace, swimming pace, really any exercise speed. You can measure it. And you can use those measurements to track your progress over time. And seeing that data can be motivating. It can be fun to see your progress over time as you get faster or are able to go longer. So the take home here about your wearable fitness tracker, whatever kind it may be, is that the device is giving you data. Things like tracking your exercise minutes or logging your step counts or monitoring your pace or distance. And then you decide what to do with that data. And that could be choosing to stand up and walk around more, or go for an extra few minutes for your workout, or bump up your daily step count. And when you use that device as a tool, you use it to make decisions that support you and improve your overall fitness. And you're doing that from a place of genuine self-kindness. And that last piece, self-kindness, that is essential. Okay? So now let's talk about how you can also use your wearable fitness tracker as a weapon. Because while your Garmin or your Fitbit or your Apple Watch is most definitely a helpful tool, I have also seen your tracker used in ways that do not help you. So first, let's talk about your move ring. So that's what it is on the Apple Watch, and other devices have a similar metric. And the idea behind the move ring is to give you an idea of how many calories you've burned throughout the day simply by moving. And that calorie count is the sum of a few different factors. So your move ring takes into account the calories you burn both through exercise and non-exercise related activity. So let me break this down for you. So remember the term NEAT. I've definitely talked about it before in the podcast. And NEAT, it just stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So to keep it really simple, NEAT is everything you do with your body that is not planned exercise, eating, or sleeping. So things like cleaning your house, walking to the mailbox and back, unloading groceries from your car, standing in line, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. It's all of your movement patterns outside of exercise that get you through your day. Okay? So remember that your body requires energy in the form of calories to support any activity you do, whether that's your HIIT class or a non-exercise activity like lugging laundry up the stairs. And your non-exercise activity, or NEAT, while it's not planned exercise, it's still a major contributor to your overall metabolism. It contributes anywhere from 15 to 30% of your overall energy output. And your device is tracking that as part of your total move goal. That contributes to the progress on your movement ring. So, of course, too, your tracker is also tracking the calories you burn from exercise. And this is especially where I see people run into trouble. So this is where I have seen people really weaponize their trackers against themselves. So remember that the number of calories burned that you see on your tracker is a very gross estimate, like very, very loose estimate at best, okay? So after you finish a 20-minute interval workout and your watch tells you, hey, congratulations, you burned 350 calories, please take that number with a very large grain of salt, okay? And as a side note, I'm going to add one more weapon in here because it functions very similarly to the move ring on your watch, and that is the measurement of calories burned on your exercise equipment. So as much as I love to see a high output after I feel like I've killed myself on the Peloton, I do not take that number as fact, like at all. So again, this is a piece of machinery that has no idea what your unique physiology is. So please, please, please do not take the number of calories burned from your exercise equipment as fact, okay? Don't enter it into your MyFitnessPal. Don't eat those calories back throughout the day. That is totally, totally defeating the purpose, okay? So your exercise equipment is similar to your fitness tracker because they are both notoriously inaccurate. Your fitness tracker is giving you a rough estimate of the total number of calories you burn, both through NEAT and through planned exercise. Your watch will use a combination of your age, gender, height, weight, and heart rate to give you this data. And there are some articles suggesting that our devices have anywhere from a 27 to a 93% error rate, up to 93%. And that is because there are so many factors that contribute to your overall calories burned. And that is especially true for your planned exercise session. And a watch is just not going to be able to measure all of those factors. Okay? So please, please, please do not take the calories burned on your watch as fact. Okay? These numbers really are super inaccurate, both for measuring your exercise and your NEAT. Okay? And I've seen you use this measurement of calories burned, or more specifically, I've seen you use your move ring against yourself in a number of different ways. So first, you will take that number and take it as fact. And often you'll use that amount of calories burned to justify the food you eat. I've had clients tell me or even text me pictures of their move ring on their Apple Watch after a workout. And while I will most definitely high five you for getting that workout done, to be honest, those numbers don't mean anything to me because those numbers aren't accurate. And to be perfectly honest, you don't need your watch to tell you that you had a hard workout, okay? And more importantly, your exercise does not earn you calories, okay? It doesn't work that way. If you've been around here at all, you know what I'm going to say. Exercise is not a way to justify or cancel out the food you eat. That's a great way to create serious resentment toward exercise when it does not deliver on weight loss, all right? But I've seen so many of my clients, my family, and my friends somehow connect their move ring with the amount of food they eat. And this is totally using your tracker as a weapon against yourself. And I'll also see the reverse of this. I've had clients share that they don't feel like they can eat as much when they don't exercise enough. Or they will get really down on themselves and feel that they need to restrict food because they haven't closed their move ring. So again, that's using your device against yourself. And that's going to create problems for you. Okay. So to be clear, you will likely be more hungry on days that you work out versus days you don't. And some people, including some of my clients, choose to plan their food so that they're eating more on the days they work out because they know they're going to be more hungry. And all things being equal, you will burn more calories on your workout days than your non-workout days. But when you start withholding food from yourself or using your movement goal as a determining factor for how much you eat in a day, that's when we run into problems. Remember, this is a gross estimate at best, and it's often wildly inaccurate. Okay? And then the second way I see people use their tracker as a weapon is through exercise shaming. So if you've never heard this term, that may be because it's a term we made up in our house to describe what your watch does when you haven't moved as much as you normally do. It's exercise shaming. So for the Apple Watch wearers out there, you know what I'm talking about. The watch knows your goals for movement and it knows your patterns. So if you are a regular exerciser and you typically log a certain amount of exercise or movement overall by a certain time, your device knows that. And on the days you're not following that pattern, you get a gentle nudge from the device. It will vibrate and say, hey, check your rings. Or here's a look at your activity so far today. So in our house, that's code for exercise shaming. That's what we call it. And the watch is simply saying, hey, take a look. You are usually farther along by this time. And I used to let it really get to me. It would really bother me to feel that vibration on my watch, which usually comes around 10 a.m. on Saturdays because I don't exercise as hard on those days. But I've decided But even if Apple does not believe in rest days, I do. So I remind myself that my watch is a machine and its job is to pick up patterns, and it's been programmed to remind me of those patterns. And I leave it at that. And I usually don't close my ring on Saturdays, and I'm okay with that. I don't let the watch have any undue power over me. It's just giving me numbers, nothing more, nothing less. And I will not use those numbers against myself. And the point here is pretty straightforward. You are not expected, nor are you encouraged to exercise at the same level of intensity 7 days per week. Okay? If you have set a target for yourself and it's high, that's awesome. But it does not mean you should aim to exercise intensely all 7 days of the week. Remember, your tracker does not understand what a rest day is, but you do. And it's important to take those rest days. All right? Okay, so next, let's talk about the scale. So I know I wrote an entire podcast about the scale, and if you want to get into all the pros and cons about using it, go back to episode number 7, because I address the scale face on in that episode. I pick apart all the reasons you might want to use the scale, and I also do a dive into the reasons you may choose to skip using the scale. But for today's purposes, I'm going to highlight how you can use the scale as both a tool and a weapon. So first and foremost, you can use the scale as a tool, and then it tells you the Earth's gravitational pull on your body. It gives you a unit of measure. It's an inarguable number. It's objective. So when you weigh yourself regularly, you can pick up patterns to know if your weight is trending upward, downward, or staying the same. And so for some of you, using the scale as a tool adds a layer of accountability to your weight loss plan. So knowing that you're going to weigh yourself may lead you to make different choices about your nutrition. Meaning, you may choose to skip the 4th or 5th piece of pizza, or you may skip having a second glass of wine if you know you're going to weigh yourself in the morning. So you can also use the scale to help you decide if the nutrition plan you're following is working. When you have objective numeric feedback and you have a number of scale measurements over time, you can course correct and make changes to your nutrition plan if you're not losing weight. And when I say this, I mean a number of scale measurements over a couple of weeks. It can be really challenging to make decisions about your food plan when you're measuring your weight once a month, or even more erratically. If you measure once a month, that's 2 data points over 30-ish days. And it's really challenging to change your nutrition plan based on those measurements because it's hard to pick up trends when we don't have a lot of data points. So in that case, I would suggest a pair of pants to try on regularly to see if they fit. But even then, that's going to be a bit of a challenge. So when you use the scale regularly, you'll see how things like salt and water, hormones, stress, sleep, peeing, pooping, you'll see how all of those factors contribute to your weight. And the more you use the scale, the more you'll see just how much day-to-day fluctuation there is in your weight. Your weight could be up 2 pounds one day, and it may be down 3 the next. There are some estimates that your weight can fluctuate up to 6 pounds in a single day. So when you weigh yourself regularly, you'll see those fluctuations. And honestly, this is where I see the scale having the greatest role as a tool. You will see how fickle the scale is and how fluctuations happen every single day, and that no one number is the be-all, end-all for your weight loss. You will learn that it is not a big deal, and that no, in fact, you did not gain 3 pounds overnight. That's the salt from your dinner and then the water you're holding on to. Because then, if you weigh yourself the following day, you'll see the scale come back down. And the other way the scale can be used as a tool is that it actually can be motivating. When you find a way of eating that works for you and you stick with it for months or even years, and you see the scale number go down, that's progress. That progress is motivating, and it can give you the drive to keep going and stick with your plan. So the point here is that the scale can most definitely be used as a tool if it's used properly. And again, let me make it clear, if you have a history of eating disorders, or if the scale leads you to have obsessive behaviors, then this would not apply. But for most people, the scale can be used safely as a tool. All right? So now that we've talked about how you can use the scale as a tool, let's talk about how you might be using it as a weapon. So I've already alluded to it, but I want to spell it out here. I most commonly see the scale used as a weapon when you use it infrequently. If you weigh yourself sporadically, like once a month or once every 2 weeks, this may not be enough data to give you an accurate picture of what your weight is actually doing. And what I see most commonly is that the less often you weigh yourself, the more of a big deal you make out of it. There's a big buildup, and it becomes way more of a deal than it needs to be. And that's when you often end up using it as a weapon against yourself. And to piggyback off this, I will also see you use the scale as a weapon when you choose to weigh yourself only when you think you've been good. And I put good in air quotes, but I've had more than one client tell me she won't weigh herself after going off plan, or after a weekend of eating out, or a week of vacation. And instead, she'll weigh herself after a week of being more or less consistent and put a ton of importance in that one number. And if that one number isn't what she wants, she will get all kinds of mad and make it mean all kinds of things. And then she won't step on the scale again for another couple of weeks. Rinse and repeat. So here's the bottom line. When you only weigh yourself when you think that you've been good and avoid weighing yourself when you think you've been bad, you are setting yourself up for serious resentment towards the scale. In science, that's known as cherry-picking data. And even then, you're still going to shoot yourself in the foot. And here's why. Even on your best days, or after a stretch of your best days, you will likely not see the scale go down as much as you'd like. It just doesn't work that quickly. Plus, remember all the other factors that contribute to your weight. Your food intake is just a small part of that. So to put that much stock in one scale number and to only weigh in on the days you think you've been doing your best, that's really not using the scale as a tool. You're using it as a weapon against yourself. You're missing the full spectrum of your weight under all conditions, and that's not helping you. You're missing the inevitable biologic and physiologic fluctuations of your weight that are real for every single human on this earth. And my point here is not to convince you to weigh yourself every day. I know I just spent the last few minutes talking about the downsides of weighing sporadically or monthly, but at the end of the day, the decision about how often to weigh yourself is a personal one, and it has to make sense for you. But I would encourage you to do some serious self-reflection about this one. Many of you have a complicated relationship with the scale, and it doesn't have to be that way. Remember that the scale is not judging you. You are taking care of that all on your own. Think about what you make that one number mean about you. I know that for many of you, you make the scale mean all kinds of negative things about yourself, and we need to fix that. And one of the things I help people do is practice reframing so that the scale does not have power over you it has no business having. When you learn to manage your thoughts and feelings around the scale, you'll realize it does not have to mean anything about you at all. Okay? All right, next. Let's talk about your self-monitoring system. So whether that's your calorie tracker or your food journal, whatever system of monitoring you're using to see what you're eating, let's talk about it. So I know I've said this before, but for anyone new here, self-monitoring is an essential component of any habit change you're looking to make. The whole purpose is to create awareness and see if what you think you're doing is what you are actually doing. And this is opposed to simply guessing. And this is not to say that you're required to track your calories to lose weight, not at all. But what I am saying is that some form of self-monitoring is super important if you want to make long-lasting change. Okay? So when you use self-monitoring as a tool, similar to the scale, your system will give you all kinds of information. It gives you data, whether that's an estimate of how many calories you're taking in, or if you're simply writing everything down that you eat in order to get a picture of what you're eating in a given day, or both. Either way, you are getting information. You're also getting accountability. So for many of you, simply committing to logging your food is enough to give you a pause and ask yourself if you really want that second piece of chocolate cake because you're going to need to log it later. So that's accountability. Self-monitoring also allows you to pick up patterns. Things like excessive nighttime snacking after dinner, or eating too little at breakfast or lunch that results in being hangry later. All of these are pieces of information that you can use to adjust your eating and adjust your nutrition plan. You can also use self-monitoring to adjust your macronutrient breakdown. So for example, when my clients start self-monitoring, many of them see they're not eating as much protein as they think they are. So then they make adjustments to their meals to include more protein. And then they find they're more satiated and snacking less throughout the day. So that is a win. So I see self-monitoring in this way as a positive. This is all good data that can help you. Now, on the flip side, where I see so many people use self-monitoring as a weapon is when you take it as straight up, stone cold fact and do not allow any room for either recording or other human error. So I'll share with you the most common scenario I see when clients use their self-monitoring against themselves. And this is especially true for calorie tracking apps. So what I will see is that the client will track her best guesstimate as to what and how much she thinks she's eaten. But then when all is said and done, despite using the tracking app, she's not losing weight. And then she'll get really, really frustrated because the tracker says she's only eating 1,400 calories, but she's not losing any weight. And my response to this is always the same. Something is not adding up. If we did your numbers, which I do with all my clients, and if we calculated your calorie deficit to be 1,400, and you've been tracking and your tracker says you're consistently eating 1,400 calories, but you're not losing any weight, something is not adding up here. So often I will start by redoing the math just to be sure we've got an appropriate calorie deficit. And once we confirm the math, then we have to look at the tracking. And the tracking is usually where the problem is. And this is not to say that you're a liar. Not at all. I'm not calling you a liar, okay? But the bigger point here is that self-monitoring, whether with a calorie tracking app or by food journaling, is an imperfect science at best. So I would never tell you to forego self-monitoring altogether. I would never tell you to stop self-monitoring. But it's important not to get so tied down to the numbers if you're counting, because those counts are often not accurate. So if you're not losing weight, barring any medical issues, you are not in a calorie deficit, no matter what your MyFitnessPal says, and no matter what your food diary says. Okay? If your target calorie intake is 1,400, and your MyFitnessPal says you're eating 1,400 calories, but you're not losing weight, I would argue that you're not actually eating 1,400 calories. I run into this all the time, and I know it's insanely frustrating. And this discrepancy usually comes from a number of places. If you're not weighing and measuring your food, you're estimating. If you're not logging every single thing you put in your mouth, you're estimating. If you're logging a serving of dinner from a recipe you've made, you're estimating. If you go out to brunch and you try to log your meal, you're estimating. So you see a theme here. There is a lot of estimating when you track your food. And that's true whether you're using a calorie tracking app or a pen and paper food journal. Either way you slice it, we're getting a best guess of the food you're taking in. But when you use this information as cold, hard fact, that's when you run into trouble and this information becomes a weapon. Because often you will get angry and irritated at the numbers. But remember, this tool is your best estimate. An estimation is not a perfect science by any stretch. So instead of insisting that your tracker is lying to you, this is an opportunity for you to get both really curious and really honest with yourself. It's an opportunity to look for where you might be eating more than you think you are, either because your portions are getting bigger, or you're not logging the bites and taste of things here and there, or that your estimation is simply that, an estimation. When you come at it from a place of curiosity and an attitude of, okay, what's going on here that I can fix? Versus coming at it from a place of anger and resentment, then you're using the tool as it's intended. Okay? All right. So to bring this all home, these are 3 of the most common tools I see clients using against themselves. So to be clear, there are more, but I wanted to highlight these tools especially because they are the ones that most commonly come up for my coaching clients. So don't even get me started on the blue dot tracker thing that measures your workout streak for the Peloton users. Ooh, that is for another day. But the take-home message here is really the same, whether you're using a fitness tracker, the calorie tracker on your exercise equipment, the scale, or your self-monitoring system. If you use the tool in a way that supports you and helps you to make decisions about eating and moving from a place of kindness, then you're using it as a true tool. If you use the tool in a way that does not support you, or if using the tool is keeping you from reaching your health, weight loss, or fitness goals, or if using the tool is creating a negative relationship between you and either food or exercise, then I would argue that you're using the tool as a weapon against yourself. And you will know which is the case for you only when you go inside. This is not something that I can diagnose for you. Sure, I can pick up inklings of frustration and irritation in coaching sessions, but at the end of the day, this is an inside job. You have to know how you're using these tools and if you're using them to your detriment or to your improvement. And I would simply add to that by saying, when it starts to feel heavy, that's when there's an opportunity right there to get curious. If you notice that you feel heavy or you feel a twinge of yuck when you look at your move ring, that's telling you something. Or if you start to feel heavy whenever you go to log something in your food diary or MyFitnessPal, that's information. Or if you feel angry, irritated, frustrated towards the scale, all of that is telling you something. And I would take that feeling, take that negative feeling, and ask yourself some questions about it. And I would ask, how are you using that tool to help you? How is the information that your food diary or your fitness tracker is showing you? How is that information there to help you? How can you use that information in a way that is kind towards yourself? What can you learn and use from that information to move yourself forward instead of using that information against yourself? And I know this takes practice. It may be that you have some well-worn patterns and habits and some unhelpful thought patterns related to how you use your fitness watch or your scale or your tracker. So it may take some time to undo those automatic responses. Meaning, when you log your food and you step on the scale and see that your weight hasn't budged and your natural response is to get angry, it's going to take time and practice to have a different response. But it is so worth it, so that instead of using your tool as a weapon, you can use it for your benefit. These tools, they are there to help you. All right? And if you want to talk more about this, let's go. When you coach with me, we will use these tools as they are intended to help you. I will not let you use any of these tools against yourself. And I will equip you with the knowledge and skills you need to create a lifestyle of habits that give you the strength and fitness you're looking for. So check out my website, go to www.carriehollandmd.com/contact. Tell me what habits you'd like to create, and let's get going. All right? So thank you again for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you again next week. If you like what you've been hearing, please review the show. I would love to get your feedback and ideas. Your suggestions have inspired episodes and will help me make the show better for you. And share this podcast with a friend. Text a show link, share a screenshot, or post a link to the show on your social media. And be sure to tag me at Carrie Holland MD on either Instagram or Facebook so I can follow along and engage with you. This is how we get the word out to other working moms who want to feel strong inside and out. If you know someone who wants to feel better or eat and move differently, but she is too tired or too busy, it is time to change things up. And you know, making that change starts with how you think. And that is what we do here on the Strong as a Working Mom podcast. I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to Strong as a Working Mom. If you want more information on how to eat, move, and think so you can live in the body you want with the mind to match, visit me at carriehollandmd.com.